Good morning and welcome as we have a morning devotion today. I'm glad you've joined us, and we've been out of rotation a little bit because of some technology changes that we've been doing here at the church, getting ready for people to reopen. And so we are glad that you have joined me today. And let me just say this to kind of get this out of the way, just in case that you are thinking about joining us this weekend. Email reservations at hebronbaptist.org if you're not on our list. Otherwise, if you were already on the list, you would have gotten a link for reservations for tickets for this Sunday, and we hope that you can join us in person. We know that many of you are still going to wait a few weeks, and that's okay. But for those of you, we're excited to gather as God's people, and we are putting the protocols in place. You can learn more about that at our website, hebronbaptist.org. If you're not on our website list and don't want to email, those will go live on our website at 9 a.m. on Friday. But if you're on our list and want to go to hebronbaptist.org, reservations at hebronbaptist.org, you can get on that link and list, and they will get it to you today as they went live, and tickets are going now. We want to read today from James 4:13 through 16. This is a passage that I think is important to us, especially today and these days of the coronavirus. But I'm going to take it from a kind of a large view into thinking of the character of God and his sovereignty. So let's read beginning in James chapter 4, verse 13 to 16. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will travel to such and such city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like a vapor that appears for a little while then vanishes. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So it is sin to know the good and yet not do it. So today, I want to think about God's sovereignty. I believe that many of us have lost sight of God's sovereignty in our life. We know that it's a characteristic of God, but we kind of think it as something that is big, cosmic. Yes, God's in control, but many times we misunderstand God's sovereignty, that God is sort of, in history, he's put the puzzle together. He's done the edges of the puzzle, and the rest of it is up to us. That is a false view of God, false view of the Bible, and false view of how he controls all things. God is working in our lives and in our world. Yet also we have responsibility. God is controlling all things, all of history, and our everyday life. But if we forget is God is sovereign, then what we put on ourselves is stress, fear, worry, and even sometimes sin, because we discount that God is in control, and we try to do things apart from acknowledging him in our lives. When I was little, I remember my dad putting me on his lap sometimes when he was using the riding lawnmower. And I thought it was fun. I thought I was doing something with Dad. We were riding the lawnmower, so that was cool. And then he would say, "You drive, son." Well, I'm young. I thought I was big stuff. I thought, hey, I'm driving this lawnmower. Well, yeah, I was kind of turning the wheel sometimes. But was I really driving the lawnmower? Or was my dad? I'm pretty sure it was my dad. If not, I would have cut probably the neighbor's yard. I would have cut flowers down. I would have done so many different things. But what this reminds me of is that God is always in control. There are things that God impresses on us that we use, our characteristics, our skills, our talents, the things that we do impact our lives, but it is all in the control of God. Wayne Grudem describes or defines sovereignty this way, that sovereignty is God's exercise of power over all of his creation. See, this text here reminds us that there's a clear sense that whatever our plans are, whatever we're to do, that God is directing and ordering those plans ahead of us. Today or tomorrow, we might say we go here, but he says, but we must say, if the Lord wills. There's a reminder to us that all we do is under the control of a sovereign God. And so today I just want to think of 4 practical, real-life implications of the sovereignty of God. That as it directs us, it impacts our life and actually gives us freedom, it gives us peace, it gives us joy. And so there's 4 things that I want us to understand through the sovereignty of God. First of all, it helps us be reminded of the assurance of our salvation. We know that God created the world, and even before creation, the Bible says that God had planned the way of salvation. In Genesis chapter 3, we see that God foreordains or foretells that even to Satan, that because of sin and his temptation, that Eve's descendant or Eve's child will crush his head. We know that comes to pass with Jesus Christ on the cross. We know that Paul describes in Acts and how the religious leaders, that God worked in them to reject Christ, that he would be crucified for sin, and that God is controlling even the act of crucifying his son so that the sins of the world may be paid for. This is a reminder to us that salvation is under the work and sovereignty of God. But also this, God was in total control over the salvation of Shawn Dobbins. God is in total control over the salvation of you. He chose me. He chose you. This reminds me, God's sovereignty reminds me in the gospel that I need it, that I need to preach it every morning, that God has worked out in his plan that I am saved, that I am his, that he is mine, that he will never forsake me, that he will never leave me. And I can rejoice each and every day knowing that God has sovereignly saved me, and it will not change. What a great reminder for us today that we will never be outside the love of God. Secondly, we are free to love. You see, when we are under the care of the sovereignty of God, we are commanded and that we are moved to love others. God commands us in his word to love each other in the church, love even our enemies. But to love someone, it costs us something and actually opens us up to something even coming back on us. You see, love costs us. And even that command to love our enemies understands that it is not that when we love because people are lovable or that because people will love us in return. It's actually trusting the fact that God has said this command that we can love others, that we can love others freely because of his sovereignty, that even when suffering comes because of our love, it frees us to love them. In 1 Peter 4:19, it reminds us, so then let those who suffer according to God's will entrust themselves to a faithful Creator while doing what is good. You see, the hope or the foundation that Peter says there is that we can do good because we depend on our faithful Creator. That because he is sovereign, because he is working, because he is the maker and he is faithful, then we can trust our soul to him, even in tough and hard business of loving our enemies. Even in the tough and hard business of loving others, that even when suffering comes our way because of it. So therefore, even when you're in a position at work today, or at school, or with your friends, or online, you might receive suffering or hurt from someone, but you are free to love them, even if that suffering comes all the more, because God is in control. There's no sacrificial love without sovereignty, according to the Bible. Third, one of the benefits of sovereignty is this: there is a fearless witness that we have. We are called to share the gospel. That is indisputable in the Scriptures. There's a Great Commission command in every gospel. There is in Acts the call to go to the nations. That we know that we're to give, when every time there's an opportunity to give the hope that it is the gospel. We know that we are created by Christ and saved by Christ to share the gospel that saved us. But sometimes we get fearful. We let opportunities pass. And most of the time, if we're honest, we struggle with the fear of man. We're more concerned about what others think of us than what God thinks of us. But the sovereignty of God reminds us to be bold witnesses. It actually empowers us to be a bold witness. Think of this: if God does the saving, it's not up to us to be worried that every person that we come in contact with must be saved. And so sometimes we trick ourselves to say, I'm not sure that I know everything. I'm going to mess up this presentation. I'm not going to get all the words right. I'm not going to have all the answers. Well, the good news for you is it's not up to you. It's up to God. He's the one that does the saving. But your role is a sharer or a seed planter. And the Bible tells us that it's God that gives the growth and brings those seeds to faith. So we don't have to worry about winning every person to Christ. We just have to worry about sharing with every person with Christ. And this sovereignty and this power of God gives us the freedom to have this fearless witness. But two, to understand and not fear man, but to fear God. If God is for us, then who can be against us? We must be able to go and share the gospel and understand that it doesn't matter that we are popular or how people might respond to us. Instead, God has sovereignly placed us in our spot. And like I say sometimes, in our cubicle, in that room, in that office building, to be God's witness there. God has sovereignly placed you on that cul-de-sac or that street or that neighborhood to be God's witness for that place. That God has placed you in that locker beside that person specifically, or at that lunch table, because God has placed you to be the witness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We can live fearlessly knowing that God has sovereignly placed us, that we can use what God has done in us and planned for our lives to go and share the gospel. God's sovereignty is good because we can witness fearlessly. But fourthly and finally, and it gets us to our passage that we've read, is that we can have confident plans. This gets us to what we understand here. As this passage says, some say today or tomorrow I'll travel to this city and I'll do business and make a profit. But James reminds us, we don't know even what tomorrow will bring. How can we make such a plan and be so confident in it? But instead, he tells us that we should have this attitude of Christ, that if the Lord wills, that we will live and do this and that. That it's arrogant to think otherwise. That we are reminded that we have everything with an open hand because God is sovereignly working all of history, all of our lives, in this moment, in our plans for the world right now. Now, does that mean we don't plan? Absolutely not. We are to plan. We are to do the right things. We are to use the wisdom God has given us. We should plan both for now and for the future that God has given us. As a matter of fact, Proverbs 16:9 tells us that a person's heart plans his way. But listen to this. The Lord determines his steps. You see, everything we do is connected to God working things together for his glory and our good. So when we plan, we pray. We seek God's guidance. We seek counsel from biblical, faithful people. We look and see what we're planning to do. Is this sinful or not sinful? And then we make the plans. But we know and we trust that if we make those plans, however the plans come out, It's determined by God. So, for instance, this weekend, we had a whole different plan for our Memorial Day. We were going to have the kids. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but we were going to do something with the kids, and this is how the day was going to go. And sure enough, the plans went sideways. But that journey that we took, it was a 3 to 4 hour journey that we took that day, out of our plans and out of our control, actually made our day better because we were together as a family. We were able to talk and do things that we didn't have planned. Now, I was tempted to get angry. I was tempted to be pouting and upset. But I'd rested and asked God to give me peace, knowing that this was what He had designed for my day. So if you rest in the wise and good sovereignty of God in all your plans, you will be confident and peaceful, because you'll know that whatever details of your plan that doesn't happen, God's will always happens. That's part of your plan, and that's the most important part of your plan. That what you plan, if it happens or if it doesn't happen, it's God always working those out, and you can rest with such sweet peace. So, my prayer today is that all of us have a better appreciation and understanding of the sovereignty of God. That God's sovereignty and His plan matters in every second of every day. This past Sunday, we even sang together at the end, Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. It is so true. We need God's sovereign plan working in us, through us, around us in history, and that we, knowing this, can live at peace and rest. And when we plan, and when we work, and when we do things, we know that it's with God who is with us. Well, thank you for joining us today. If you want to know more about how you can have a relationship with Christ, that you can have peace in both the sovereignty of God, but most importantly, the salvation of Christ and salvation of God, then you can, we hope that you reach out to us. Go to our website, hebronbaptist.org. Go down to a place that's called Hope, right there on the front page. Reach out to us. Watch that video there, and then reach out to us through the link. We want to talk to you and encourage you in your walk with Christ, but most importantly, ask you this question: have you trusted in Jesus to be saved? God has worked it out that you would watch this video today. God has worked it out that you've heard the gospel. And I pray that today that you would respond in faith. We're thankful for you joining us today. We hope you have a great faith, a great day, and we will see you soon.